Hope those of you who are in Japan have enjoyed your Golden Week off. I've just gotten back from Vancouver yesterday, so I guess I'm technically still probably a little bit jet lagged, but seems it's a pretty good trip back. So I'm not feeling too bad for it. Good to see so many people there in the comments. I was looking back at the news, I guess maybe partly because I was on vacation, but also just there hasn't been a lot of news going on, which is good. It means I should be able to take some time to actually just go through not only what the topics that I've saved to talk about on the show tonight, but also to go through things like the thoughts on my trip to Canada and some updates on things which are going on. So first of all, who's there in the comments? People asking first, I see Dan H, how late do people think I will be today? I guess I was 3 or 4 minutes. I was a little bit late after the start. Actually, it's the usual reasons. It's the Sunday night routine. I should probably actually set a start time of 10:40 instead of 10:30, but it is what it is. Quinn Rankin, good to see you. Indeed, wow, I made it. James Kelly, hi. The trip was excellent. Lawrence Sakai, good to see you. Or jet lag is the worst. Well, actually, you're coming back. It's pretty brutal going to the West Coast. I was in Vancouver, so West Coast time in the US and Canada. Whenever I do business trips, I have to go to Seattle every now and then. I find that really rough going over there, although it's relatively easy coming back. Tokyo 503 in the house. Evening all indeed. Wave. Good to see you. We've got the J-Vlog as well. Good evening. Vancouver. There are a lot of people from of Chinese ethnicity there, and I know that New Zealand got a similar wave of people from Hong Kong in the mid 90s. When I was in high school in the early 90s, ahead of the 1997 reversion of Hong Kong. But I thought Hong Kong, actually Vancouver was pretty chill. Lauren Sakai indeed agrees and is correct. It's going to Japan is easier than coming to the US. Yeah, I think traveling like that way on the map, traveling east to west is easier than traveling west to east. I did enjoy the extra sleep last night, although I ended up having to stay up a lot later than I intended because my son wasn't well on the way home. So it was a while before we could leave the airport. But other than that, all good. So in terms of projects and stuff, the new season of hey, Setsuna, good to see you. Couldn't be absent from my first Reiwa episode. Indeed, thank you very much and welcome. In terms of projects, I haven't gotten very much done at all in terms of the New Japan Business Time series, but that is in the can, and we'll be starting to edit that soon. I also haven't edited any more Tokyo Digital Remix shows, although I've actually, while I was away, one thing I did do was I did learn a lot about how to use GarageBand on iOS. I actually remixed, Speak of the Devil, there's Tai Nakamura there, as well as Chris Jack and Sergeant Bilko, good to see you all. While I was remixing a track by Fogheart over Golden Week, I actually got really hands-on, and I actually got quite good. Well, I learned a lot about using GarageBand just in the evenings while my son was asleep, and as a result of that and getting into using the instruments, I actually went and got I've ordered a little mini keyboard which I can plug into my iPad, which should make that easier. I also, in order to get all the latest functions of GarageBand, I upgraded the operating system on my iPad, and then the inevitable happened from that. This is an iPad 2 from 2013, and it's been working really well, but partly because I've not been updating the operating system on it since like iOS 9. So when I updated it to iOS 12, it now crashes and freezes. So I'm also thinking about probably getting a new iPad, and as much as I'm tempted to splash out and get an iPad Pro, I really love the form factor of the iPad mini. I've gotten really used to it, and it's really great for Japan, like for taking on the train. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to go and get a new iPad mini. For now, I do love this, and it still it still works with everything that I want it to work for. But I've noticed even like watching YouTube, it started crashing more often than I wanted it to. So yeah, that was kind of a mistake, but 5 years on an iOS device is pretty good mileage. and the iPad Mini is pretty awesome. So yeah, I've been making progress on that project, which Tai Nakamura, I actually remixed one of his tracks, and although I got the sound that I was going for, which I was really happy with my mix of Tai's track. What we're doing, by the way, for this thing is the members of Tokyo Digital Crew are taking turns making a track and sharing all of the samples and all the stems that we create for that track with each other, so that everyone else can like remix it in their own sort of style. And it's really fun and it's really cool. I've got like 1.5 fully edited episodes, and we're just taking turns going through this so we can get a few episodes together. And it's actually going to be, there's a there's a kind of truth among YouTubers that it's always the projects that you put the most work and love into that never do very well, and it's always the ones that you kind of don't care about that go viral. And by that measure, this is going to be a total disaster because I'm putting so much work into this project and it's so great. You have to take my word for it. It will come when it is ready. But the Tokyo Digital Remix project, it's really good. We're actually setting it up a bit like a TV show, and it's working really well. The completed episodes that I have so far are really good, and they're motivating me to actually go and learn and up my. And this is part of the idea of the project as well. To frankly force all of us, but frankly myself in particular, this is why I prompted it. I wanted to get better at using, music making tools and getting better at remixing, and it's worked for me. I've really gotten into it, and I hear from everybody else, from Matagaijinka, from Tai Nakamura, and from Foha, that they're all finding it having the same benefits. So that's pretty awesome. Ninjaru88, hey, howdy, good to see you. So awesome projects are continuing to be awesome, although of course it's been a week's vacation. So some things I've made progress, some things I'll have to come back to. Other than that, I guess it's probably been very quiet this week. This is the time of year that people in Japan go on their vacations and whatnot, so probably YouTube's been a bit quiet if you're into watching Japan videos. I guess I can go through the news that's happened in the last week that I thought was interesting, and then I'll probably come back and talk about Canada. Oh, there it is. So, believe in yourself, welcome. You were lost in answering a question that required translating the inner voice into words, and without caffeine that took some time. I can understand the difficulty of that. And by the way, remember, as always, I will stop the show and to anyone who wants to address a question to me, if you do an @ Kiko Simon, it will flash up orange, and I will see it and I will respond. Dan H, I always appreciate the super chats, and of course I will drop everything for that as well. So I will come back to talking in Canada in detail soon, but since you're asking, how did it feel eating real cheese and butter in Canada? Did I stock up on my supplies? I did not bring any back. I don't think you're allowed to bring butter and cheese back, but certainly I had, in the hotel where I was staying in Vancouver, I had what I think was the best French toast I've ever had. It's kind of funny, I had Vietnamese like 3 nights when I was there, and I had a lot of sort of grilled food rather than, although I did have poutine. I love poutine. I had it like 2 or 3 times. Gravy, cheese and chips. Sounds disgusting, kind of looks disgusting, but it works. So I internally every morning I ate a lot of cheese, so I did definitely internally stock up, although I was modest about what I brought back. In terms of what I brought back, I think I got the practically required maple leaf cookies. These are all going to work. Grizzly bear paws. I got brownie flavored. Those should go down well at the office. And wagon wheels. These look yummy. They look a bit like chocolate pies. They are Canadian family owned, so based on that, seem like good Canadian souvenirs. So I'll take those into the office and show around. So yes, I will come back to all of that. Let's talk about that abomination that is there in the middle, and what is it with Hollywood doing this? And this isn't the first time that they take a beautiful loved character, that's been made in Japan by Japanese people, and they screw it up. And to me, what I'm thinking of is Astro Boy, Tetsuan Atomu. That's the one for me. Like when they went and made the Hollywood version of that, to the vehement opposition of the Japanese studio, they decided rather than making the original Astro Boy was supposed to be a 4 or 5 year old kid, and this was part of the necessity that the kid was a super powerful child robot, but was also an innocent child. It was basically that it was young and it wasn't very aware of the world. And yet apparently these Hollywood movie studios did some focus groups, and they found that if they cast Astro Boy as a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old, that would make a more popular character than the original Atomu, who is a young child. And they were adamant that when they got the rights for the movie, that they wanted to change the appearance and age of Atomu, saying that it worked better with their focus groups and with their pre-planning, and they went ahead and they did it, and of course it bombed. They did exactly pretty much to Atomu what they've just done again to Sonic the Hedgehog. They took kind of a cute, round, sort of appealing sort of character, and they've gone and given them teeth. I mean, it's like when they give those fluffy toys teeth. It just never quite looks right, and teeth and small eyes, and I don't know. I'm with everybody that was kind of like weirded and slightly grossed out by the Sonic character. I pretty much concur with every comment I see being said about the trailer on the internet. Jim Carrey looks great. They said it looks like he's got a lot of work ahead of him carrying the entire movie. Honestly speaking as well, as much as I was a Sega person and I loved Sonic the game, I've never been that convinced that Sonic could actually be. I think Sonic actually used to had a brief cartoon series, right? I never thought there was actually that much to a character of Sonic to actually carry even a cartoon, even like a 30-minute cartoon, frankly. I thought with Mario there was much more interesting opportunities to actually create a movie from that, and I think everybody was so excited by the original Mario Brothers movie and was so disappointed by that, partly because people saw the potential of it. I think that's an aspect where I don't really expect so much from Sonic to begin with, but since they're doing it, you might as well at least try to do it correctly. I guess at least they didn't do this to Detective Pikachu. I mean, that would have been pretty disturbing. It would have stopped kids sleeping at night. Fortunately, the only people who are angry about Sonic, I mean, again, this is playing on the nostalgia market. This is for people who played video games during the 90s. Just like we're angry that Star Wars does not give us the same wonder that it gave us as 7-year-olds when we originally watched it. We're just generally irritated that this is not looking like that thing that we loved when every 40-year-old was 20 years old now. So what can you do? Apparently the outrage was sufficient to make the director say that given that it's all CG, I guess they can fix this in post. I mean, I don't know how they'd do it, but it sounds like they will actually go and redesign the Sonic character. So that won over, and the Japanese creator tweeted out that he appreciated all the noise that was made in order to fix this, but holy crap. And by the way, I don't think I would go to a movie theater to watch this even if it looked awesome. So yeah, I did on my trip to Canada, I watched 2 movies. I watched Veep, the Dick Cheney movie, which I thought was great. Actually, I really loved it. And then I tried watching Bohemian Rhapsody. I wouldn't say I was like a huge Queen fan. I loved the music. I mean, I was a kid when most of their songs were really big. Classic songs, loved them. I don't know, I found the movie... The music was good, but I wasn't that into the movie, honestly. Halfway through, I was feeling a bit sleepy, and I kind of turned it off, and I never watched the second half of it. So I guess it was I watched it. Watching it on the airplane was the right move. I did catch up on a lot of YouTube while I was because I pay for premium. I can download the episodes, so I had a lot of subscriptions which I downloaded. Although again, I didn't because I spent so much time making music during the vacation. I actually didn't watch a lot of downloaded YouTube, but. yeah, it was pretty good catching up. Rhyming Gaijin, I've been downloading every one of his daily freestyles, which has been a lot of fun watching those. But yeah, just anyway, that is movie news, and I've again spent far too much time on the first topic, as I always do. I always look at the clock and it's like 10:50. So there we go. I'll come back to the Vancouver impressions because there aren't that much to go. Speaking of my love of music stuff, Pioneer is selling its DJ equipment business. I guess Pioneer, which is originally known for being the car stereo sort of business, and has various audio equipment related businesses, but really the DJ equipment, although within the DJ world, of course, they're like one of the main sort of makers of equipment that DJs use. It is a very niche market, and the equipment is overpriced, and so they've decided to sell off that line part of their business. I guess given the fact that the brand has such good recognition, and it is, well, again, I don't know what their books are, but it appears to be a successful business. I'm hoping that it finds a home that saves it. Although there again, I really wonder how much longer people will actually be using physical equipment for this sort of thing. I mean, I think you can pretty much already do everything that you'd use DJ controllers for now with virtual instruments and controllers that you can generate through computers and iPads. And this is someone who plays records, who DJs old-fashioned style. But as someone who's going with the flow with technology, I don't think it's a bad thing that the technology's improved. It does make me wonder how long Pioneer's business is going to last. But I thought that was a little bit sad that is going away. Yasashi89, I am not your dad, but welcome to the show anyway. Jordan Peterson, good to have you along. Food Bottomum, good to see you. There is that again. You can't unsee that, indeed. Believe in yourself. Good to have you along. So what else have we got in here? Already with the new immigration laws taking effect in April last month, there's already been a bunch of issues, including there's two types of issues which this news story sort of mixes up. One is the over-tourism issue. Places like Kyoto now just being kind of overrun and unable to cope with the number of tourists that they have. So I mean, on the one hand, the government is being asked to expand the scope of the law even further. However, the tourism thing isn't really relevant, although they're saying that it's put pressure on the accommodation industry. But the main thing is that there have been exams required to show proficiency in Japanese that have been set up associated with the law that are not the standard NLPT exams. That they haven't set up the infrastructure to meet the demand for people that want to take this test, which means that it will have trouble. I'm sorry, I just got distracted by a comment there, but they want to have a certain number of workers, and they need to get there are people queuing up to meet those quotas that they have for the workers and for the visas coming in, but they don't have, for example, the exam infrastructure to let them sit the Japanese tests that are necessary for them to be able to come in and be certified to do those jobs. So there's a bunch of things where it looks like the government kind of rushed the new visa system out without being fully prepared for it. And these are the categories, by the way. Foreign workers only solve a part of Japan's labor shortage problem. Nursing care, restaurant, construction, agriculture, hotels, building, food production, and material fabrication. And in terms of the expected shortages, you can see there in green, you can see in blue, the portion through which that shortfall will be made up with foreign workers. Nursing care in particular stands out. It's only going to be a very small part of the solution. There still is a huge shortage of these workers. I just realized as I'm talking, I'm sorry, but I'm feeling, my throat's feeling kind of scratchy tonight, or hoarse, not like a cold, just I guess it's again lack of sleep. Pardon me. Sergeant Bilko made a comment that there's a huge community using real hardware to control these digital programs, DJing on Twitch. Right, and I know that you can use Pioneer DJ equipment as well. They actually DJ video stuff, and it is super cool. But the point is that the hardware, while it's really nice and you can learn physically, you can develop the muscle memory for how to use the machines to do the things that you want to do. In the end of the day, the equipment is just basically hardwired to put on a fixed circuit board what you can emulate, or what you can, basically, and to control a computer program that's baked into the equipment. And nowadays you don't need the equipment to be able to do the same thing. You could do the same thing on different interfaces, which is to say, although right now the physical interfaces are still a big thing for DJing, and maybe it will continue because people do like to have the knobs to twist and so on, I can see it going away in time. I guess that's probably partly why Pioneer is selling its equipment business. But we'll see. Yeah, and actually, thanks for the tip. I didn't know that there was people into doing DJing on Twitch, so I'm actually curious to go and look that up now. Anyway, I apparently during this last week had my 10th anniversary on Twitter. That is a funny thing. I remember going onto Twitter and really not seeing much purpose in it between starting in 2009 and really until the earthquake in 2011. It didn't really, I wasn't sure what to do with it. It was kind of fun, but I didn't really see much purpose in it. But that said, you could argue that of all the platforms that I'm on, I consider YouTube still my main platform. I'm obviously also on Facebook, I'm also on Instagram, I'm also on SoundCloud, I'm also on Twitter. But when you look at the numbers, really, in some ways, I think Twitter is actually my largest, most engaged platform, even though I do spend most of the time there sharing articles that I find interesting. I do like to interact with people. If they comment on something, I'll comment back. But my Twitter account, I guess I'll show you in a minute when I come back to the Vancouver comments. But it's actually going quite well. So it's kind of funny to see 10 years already on Twitter. When Twitter's survived for 10 years, I wouldn't have imagined. The government's setting up an automated system. They're going to invest in an automated system for translating 31 languages. Interesting idea here. This still reflects to me one misplaced optimism in the ability of automation to handle translation. It's not that I don't think ultimately, translation will be automated and accurate. I think that's where the world is going. I don't think it's yet there, even though it's made some real jumps with neural network-based translation in recent years. It's improved a lot. My old complaint that both computer engineers and lay people who wanted automated translation the big mistake that a lot of people seem to make in early attempts at translation was they believed that language was like computer language. It was that if you fed a bunch of grammar rules and a bunch of vocabulary to a computer, it would be able to and then show the equivalent grammar rules and the equivalent vocabulary, it would be able to do accurate translation. And the mistake of that approach is that that's not how language works. Language is very contextual, it's phrase based. So I always sort of said you're never going to, as someone who's spent a lot of time living in a country and learning another culture and a language, it's not until you can actually go on a much bigger, you can't boil down languages into principles and vocabulary. You can't break it down to elements to simplify it and then be able to translate it everything. It's the opposite. You actually have to learn all the context and all the full phrases. And this is really, humans do this over a lifetime. And it's really through that big data approach. It's the opposite. Rather than boiling it down, you need to aggregate, millions of examples and then develop a system that's intelligent enough to pick out the right example for the right case for when to convert. Automated translation now seems to have caught onto that. And plus, computing is now improved to the point, both in terms of storage and processing, that it's able to get close to what humans do. But it still is going to take some time yet. The fact that the Japanese government wants to do this right now with 31 languages, I think it's probably a little bit too soon, a little bit too optimistic. However, if it results in investment, which pushes this along further, I don't think it's going to come from the government. I think it's going to come from, the big IT companies are going to be the ones that'll get there. Yeah, it's interesting that the government still thinks this is a solution. It reflects to me the kind of decision making of people who don't really fully still understand the technology, if you ask me. But if they're deciding to invest in the technology more, then that's okay. The JVlog, by the way, left a comment aimed at me. Am I still taking requests for business questions for that other series? Well, what we're going to do is that we've recorded the next series. So when the next season starts, we'd like to take. You can leave comments and suggestions for the next series in the next series comments. So I don't have a date for when that's going to be released yet. I'm hoping in June or July. So stand by for that. If you put them in the old season, we're not going to look at those comments now when we make the next season. So I suggest holding on until the new upcoming season is released, given that that's been recorded now. I'm sorry, I'm struggling to talk tonight, which is a bit strange. Give me a moment, let me quickly mute this. Right. Hey, TechArt2, good to see you, as well as Tokyo Real Estate Man, ShibuyaRepublic.org, good to see you, from Shibuya Republic indeed. Thank you everyone for joining. Just going through this bit of fairly quiet Golden Week. Just other news that I found interesting during the week, NHK reporting that 13% of all houses, 8.46 million houses in Japan are vacant, unoccupied. Perk, hey, good to see you, Perk. Thanks for saying hello. And remember, if you're there in the, even if you're lurking and just watching, I do love it when people say hello to let us know that they're there. And don't forget to like if you like. So yeah, it is funny. How can a country have homelessness when there are 8.46 million vacant homes? Well, part of the reason is that the government doesn't really have any power to do anything with those 8 million homes. Although this is something that they are starting to look at now, the idea that if homes are not claimed, or taxes or whatever owed on them are not paid after a certain time, that the government can just confiscate them. Indeed, another series of grudge movies is probably a good approach to it. But yes, if they're not built, to me, I think there's a huge opportunity to knock these things down and increase park space and public facilities. Anything that I'd be able to say, hey, Red Man, good to see you, man. And Dave O'Hunter, good to see you. Wow, it's good to see everyone there in the comments. Good to see you all. Good evening, everybody. So yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, Japan, 8.5 million, 13% of all houses in Japan are unoccupied. I guess this is kind of good. It's partly why we haven't had a real estate bubble, at least not since the end of the Showa period. Through Heisei, it's been pretty much flat the whole time. And it looks unlikely that there would be one with this. The only thing is that Japanese don't like to buy second-hand houses, and they don't like to live in buildings that are older than 20 years. So although most of these places you have all these unoccupied houses, there isn't really a culture of renovating or doing up or preserving these things unless you live in them constantly. But even then, they really don't look after houses and buildings here very well in Japan. They prefer to knock them down and build them new. So this is going to be, again, like the aging society. Another thing that the government's probably going to have to look at. And within it, to me, I see opportunities, but there's also a lot of hassle with this as well if it's not addressed. Stupid school rules. In fact, this is the last one that I've picked up from this week, so I'll go through the stupid school rules. This was kind of a bit of a topic when I mentioned how what was it that schools were requiring disclosure of social media information that people were outraged about. Sora News followed up that story with another story of just general strange school rules, and we know the famous ones about everyone having to have black hair, including non-Japanese students, like blonde students were forced to dye their hair black. The school saying that, the intention was to prevent kids from dyeing their hair, i.e. Japanese kids making their hair brown. But in order to, when they forced someone with brown hair to dye their hair black, and the parents said, I thought your whole idea was to stop kids dyeing their hair, and they said, no, if there's someone there with brown hair, the other kids are going to get jealous and want to dye their hair brown, so she has to dye her hair black so that they don't dye their hair. I remember there were these very stupid, these were private school rules, mostly in Kansai. But apparently the MPO, there was a non-profit called Black Kosoku or Nakuso Kosoku. I guess that's talking about school. I see school rules, not kisoku, which are just the general word for rules. For example, students can only wear certain colors of underwear. Students are not allowed to have ponytails. Students are only allowed 3 sneezes in class. Students must get vacation from a teacher to cut their hair over summer vacation. Male and female students must have 2 meters of distance between them. Students are not allowed to wear scarves during exams. I don't really understand these, but yes, a lot of these are, and some of these things like fingernail inspections, they do those at rugby games. I mean, there's a reason for it at rugby games, to prevent people sort of injuring each other with scratches and so on. But yes, anyway, Japan definitely still has some stupid rules, and it partly comes from the fact I think a lot of teachers in regular high schools and junior high schools, they're not even required to go to teachers college. They just need to have an undergraduate degree. So these are people who don't really necessarily have the best adjustment to society to begin with that are often making these rules. But yes, that is that. So I'm going to dive into my Twitter account, and in fact, let me just stop that for a moment. So let's bring that back. It was there the whole time. As you can see, my Twitter account, I have 11,000 followers, which is cool actually, and it's pretty active. So that is a lot more, in a way, active than I know. I've got 35,000 subscribers on YouTube, or 33,000 subscribers now on YouTube. There's been some cleanups, I think, of the old redundant accounts, but it's I'd say probably my followers on Twitter are more engaged, so it's kind of cool that to reflect on 10 years there. It's going great, and of course you can interact with me there if you do that. Keyboard inspection, Hikosami, show us. Well, you mean like a piano keyboard? I've got it coming tomorrow. I don't have one right now, but it'll be coming soon, so I can show you on the next show. Oh, pardon me. So thoughts on Canada. Let me go and get these. In fact, this is probably the best way if I go up to the original one. In fact, I did 2 of these. One was during the week, and one was as I left. So let me see if I can cache this. Yeah. When I was in Vancouver, I saw lots of cars that I really like that I don't see very often in Japan, including the BMW i8. I thought that was just a really nice car. So where is it? Oh yeah, the other thing is that my son has just recently gone into Fortnite. So I've started playing it with him, and now I must admit I'm kind of getting into it myself. So if any of you play Fortnite, my handle name on Fortnite is Hiko Simon, the same as my YouTube channel. So you are welcome to add me on that if you ever want to team up or battle or do whatever on Fortnite. I'm quite enjoying that. I'm playing that using my mobile phone, but it's working quite well. That is too far back, so it must be somewhere. It should stand out because there wasn't a link. One moment. Vancouver is pretty cool. And I did a whole collection of. Okay, can't help comparing Vancouver to Seattle because Seattle's where I've been and it's 3 hours drive away, and I must say I really like Vancouver. So that is where I started. And the thoughts that I saved on this were sorry if this is causing you motion sickness. Okay, so the first batch of impressions that I have, Dan H, by the way, has a comment there. I think an interesting topic that hasn't been talked about is Japanese Republicans demonstrating against the introduction of the new era. I saw the article on BBC talking about them. So first of all, I can talk about that briefly. One, there are not many. In a country of 120 million people, the number of people who are sufficiently against the emperor system, there's like 2 or 3 MPOs that exist, groups that exist for this purpose in Japan to protest the emperor system. They number like hundreds, and they're mostly formed during the 60s and 70s, during the time being against the emperor was one of the tenets of the Red Army, the Japanese Red Army, and the extreme leftist movements in Japan that formed on university campuses during the 60s. When you see these groups on TV or in the news, they are generally extremely elderly. They're all pretty much from that time period. Really, no one from the 80s really got into this, and ideologically, they're very much aligned with the communists. They generally have the same principles of opposing the U.S. military presence in Japan. Just generally opposing the right wing in Japan. And wanting Japan to be sort of independent or aligned with near Asian countries, yes, they see that the preservation of the emperor system as being they justify it as being linked to the war guilt of the emperor, but this is more to do with as well just the general political position that the emperor represents. Kind of the centerpiece of the whole right wing and ideology of fascism in Japan. Truth is that the imperial system was during the Meiji period and during the Civil War period before that. All sides would recognize the emperor, even fighting against each other. So he was kind of a figure of unity. So again, when you had kind of radicals, sort of anarchists from the 60s and 70s that wanted to overthrow the system, just like in the UK as well. Actually, there's probably, so this is the thing. If you know the UK or Commonwealth countries, it's fairly common in Australia. Not really in New Zealand. It is in Australia and other countries. And personally, from New Zealand, I'm for getting rid of the monarchy. Not that I have anything against the monarchy. I just think it's irrelevant to New Zealand that New Zealand should have its own head of state. And Australia's further along towards thinking the same thing. Within the UK, there probably are a small number of people who think it's ridiculous to have a monarchy system. But in terms of people willing to go out and protest to get rid of the monarchy, it's probably a fairly small percentage. But however small it is in the UK, it's probably bigger than in Japan. And they're generally from a very specific background. And the people profiled in the BBC article met the profile perfectly. The insight I have into this is that I actually originally homestayed in Tokyo. My first girlfriend's family were communists, and although they did not appear radical communists, they were, for example, against the emperor system themselves and for admitting war guilt and all this sort of stuff, and very liberal on all of these things. But they were. I've come to understand, I even understood at the time, that those are a very, very small minority within the society. I mean, arguably as small and probably much smaller even than the far right in Japan. The far right has a high visual profile in Japan, but again, I'd say that the far right in Japan is far smaller than the far right in New Zealand, for example, or in Canada, or in UK, or America, like the extreme far right. And I would say that the extreme opposite left, well, it's pretty much just like the 60s and, you know, it's the same phenomenon. It's the people who used to join those extreme sort of leftist terrorist groups and militant groups in the 60s. They exist in Japan. The movement was very large in Japan actually at that time, even though it's died away. But yeah, it's pretty much a remnant of that. So those people are there, but and you know, objectively, let's face it, it's silly. Monarchies are silly. You know, the old Monty Python Lady of the Lake skit where King Arthur explains himself to the French castle. Yeah, I think it's a bit like religion in Japan as well. People sort of just are happy for it to be there without thinking too deeply about what it is, you know. Yeah, basically the reason it hasn't really been talked about very much is that frankly it's just not really enough there to really talk about, I think, is the reason, Dan H. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, impressions of Vancouver, based on, first of all, in comparison to Seattle. So first of all, I found the city is beautiful. It's clean, really well set out. The suburbs are picturesque. It's a nice city. Now, I haven't really been around much of Bellevue and the wealthy suburbs around Seattle. Whenever I go there, I'm mainly in the downtown and the city. But certainly, I was in the downtown of Vancouver, and the downtown of Vancouver was, I mean, there are some sort of dodgy parts, but even the dodgy parts are much nicer and much cleaner than the equivalent areas in Seattle. So even the downtown I found to be really, really nice by comparison. I also found, I was looking at Vancouver thinking, how does this compare to what I know 3 hours drive away in the United States? I think of Seattle as cosmopolitan, but in Vancouver, it's way, way beyond Seattle. You see, you hear lots of languages, and not Asian. It's not just like it's all Chinese have taken over. You hear Spanish, like European Spanish, Portuguese, French everywhere. A lot of tourists from Europe seem to like to visit Vancouver. So you hear lots of different languages, a lot more Asian people, obviously. The other thing that I really appreciated about Vancouver was when I was in Hawaii and when I was also in Seattle, I asked people, like when I was in Hawaii, I was asking, where's a marae? Where's a place where I can go and see local indigenous culture? And I asked this to indigenous Hawaiian people, and they said, yeah, we don't really have anything like that here anymore. They felt kind of sad about it, and there's something that they respect about New Zealand that we haven't. I was like, okay, that's a bit strange. When I was in Seattle as well, I understand you can go to the casino, which is on a reservation. There are casinos near Seattle you can go to. But outside of that, there's no real acknowledgement of the First Nations, of the original inhabitants of the area anywhere. There's no hint of any cultural history or existence of that from before the colonial history of Seattle itself. Vancouver, by contrast, you do see a lot of places discussion of the First Nations culture, not just of Canada but of Vancouver as well, and the multiple tribes that lived in the city, the territory of the city for thousands of years. And I thought that was pretty cool. So I found that cosmopolitanism pretty good. Metrics. Canada is like a weird sci-fi world where America uses metrics and everything makes sense. I really appreciated that speed signs were in kilometers per hour, temperatures were in Celsius. It's not hard, America, and I still don't understand why America can't handle that. I did find the credit card machines were interesting. Every time they'd ask you, do you want French? And I'm guessing there's a law that requires you to ask that question and to program everything. But although it still says, wait un moment, s'il vous plaît, it still asks that even after I've selected English. So again, they seem to put a lot of care towards making the French feel included, which is very nice of them. I mean, there is a whole province, I guess, and it is an official language, so fair enough. People are fit, yeah. And the other thing, I noticed in Seattle, like people wear like lycra pants, like a lot, like hot pants. And I'm not saying that like in a pervy way. I mean, honestly, sometimes it's like, please wear baggy pants. But most of the time, they wear it because, I don't know if they do it to force themselves to keep fit, but you don't see many fat people. Like, yeah, people generally all look like they're all on the way to or from the gym, which is definitely not the case in Seattle. I had some people explain to me this is partly because rents are so high that people can't afford food. Rents are high, wages are low, so they have to cut on spending on food, hence they all look fit and good looking. Well, I would say that's working. People are friendly. Even the homeless people actually say hello and good morning to you, which was nice. Lots of sorries. So yes, lots of hellos. I thought that was fun. They have tipping culture, which again I find frustrating. I kind of joked that how could Canada have won the War of 1812 and still have American culture of tipping? And people did point out, yeah, but remember that you have to tip because people are not getting paid properly otherwise. And I get that. But it's a little bit like you're supporting a system of terrorism to me. You're giving in to the terrorists when you're enabling the system which allows employers to underpay their workers and depend on tips when you underpay the workers, But sure, I get it. Canada has tipping too, and I did try to tip generously everywhere. But again, it's to me, it's enabling a system of worker abuse that shouldn't exist, and it's confusing as well for people who are not used to it. I don't know how much to pay, and I'm happy to pay whatever I have to pay, especially when I'm on vacation. I don't care. I'm not going to haggle a $1 or $2 tip, but I don't want to get a crappy attitude because I forgot or because I tipped the wrong amount. And I don't want to feel like an idiot over tipping either. Just tell me what to pay and I'll pay it. It's pretty much my attitude, but there's something about America and Canada that I still can't quite get my head around. Public transport is really, really good. On time, the Compass pass system works really well with the ferries, the buses, the trains. So I was really impressed with that. Food. Again, I got some blowback about this comment, but I did point out, generally I found that Seattle, although there are some good restaurants and so on, in terms of like running around in a hotel and going out and grabbing lunch everywhere, I did notice after a few days that every meal I'd had was a variation of ham and cheese on bread. So either it'd be pizza at night, a ham sandwich for lunch, and a cheese melt for breakfast. And yeah, after a few days I was getting really worn down by it. I do find the food in Vancouver was just really good and diverse, but yeah, it was pretty good quality. So and I was wondering, how do people stay fit with that? So since given how good the food is, and including all the poutine and stuff like that. Oh, pardon me. Yeah, service is friendly, but it's a bit laid back and meh. It's not like Japanese good service where people are like falling over themselves to come up and serve you quickly and efficiently. It's a friendly attitude, although not necessarily great service. But yeah, I think that's a lot like New Zealand and Australia actually. Oh crap, I went the wrong one. Oh geez, I just lost my place. Let me go back and find it. I think that was the last one on that list anyway. Here we go. And finally, I like how the supermarkets have lots of brands that I've never heard of, including some familiar British brands. So yeah, feels like I'm at home. Which is good. Toronto is better than Vancouver. Well, okay, I will have to go then because I really did like the food in Vancouver. By the way, Matthew Fontaine CYR, I'm sorry you retracted a message, but hello, welcome to the show, and feel free, don't be shy, feel free to comment, including disagreeing with anything that I say. I'm quite happy to have that. So yeah, my final thoughts as I was leaving Vancouver, just on Canada in general. I'm not going to eat the cookies on the stream. No, those are for work. Although I did get some peppermint Oreos, which you can't get in Japan. So I've been having those, but those are not in this room. So, about to leave Vancouver. Final thoughts on my first ever visit to Canada. First thing, and this is true, in New Zealand, there's so many shows that I watched as a kid that I never realized were Canadian until later on. A bit like the anime shows, I never realized were Japanese until later on. So things like the Edison Twins, I think 3-2-1 Contact, I think that was Canadian. I can't even tell actually, but certainly I didn't learn for a long time that The Littlest Hobo was Canadian. I mean, looking back, I mean that's like the most Canadian TV show possibly ever. And I found as I was walking through Stanley Park and crossing the river at Capilano and Lynn Canyon and Grouse Mountain and Van Dusen Gardens, the whole time I was hearing the theme song to the TV show, The Littlest Hobo. I don't know if you guys know it. I'm not going to sing it for you, but it's kind of awesome. And yes, I kept I kept hearing it. And yeah, tips are a pain. I kind of figured it out, but it's one of those things that I feel like isn't a good culture anyway. It's not a good culture to have. I understand why it's there, and you do kind of get the hang of it with time. But yes, coming back again, my hotel had the best French toast I've had in my life. Every morning I had this French toast, and it was really good. So basically, I'm now associating Canada with great French toast. Freedom toast. that would be highly probable. That would be that Americans might call it that. It was probably invented by Belgium. I mean, you know how these things work. It's kind of weird to me that Seattle has like Boeing, Starbucks, Amazon, and Microsoft, yet Vancouver feels a lot more affluent. I mean, all the cars are like expensive and brand new. The houses are immaculate. The roads, the public services are great. So I can't really tell where Vancouver's wealth comes from. And even having come back, I still don't understand this fully. I can see they have a big lumber industry historically, and they seem to have lovely rose gardens. I can't really figure out anywhere else that all the money comes from other than Chinese real estate investment, which might well be it. But yes, also as a Kiwi, I always felt close to Canada, but I realize now that even then I never really distinguished it much from the US, and it feels a lot more distinct now. Yeah, also makes me question who really won the War of Treasonous Secession. Yeah, supposedly, Canada were the bits that didn't escape British rule, yet everything that I've seen West Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, 24 hours of New York, which was awesome, San Francisco a couple of times, and Seattle a couple of times. Vancouver's like as a place that looks like a nice place to live and a place that seems to be working really well. It seems to have America pretty well. I mean, you think about the medical care, the public services, the safety, just the general niceness of people. It's kind of hard to say that Canada lost out on the independence thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Japan does a couple of things better. I did notice, yes, whenever I was trying to cross a street, cross the road, I get so used in Japan to be able to look around and hear when the traffic signal changes and know that it's okay to walk from the sound. Plus you have all these markers of where to stand and stuff, and without that I find sometimes that I wouldn't even notice that the traffic light had changed and I was supposed to walk across. So things like that, things like the toilets, there are things which are still better in Japan, which you just get used to in Japan, and you notice are gone when they're gone. So there are a couple of times I almost missed crossing the street just because I didn't notice that the traffic light had changed. Indeed, non-Japanese toilets were a struggle, but I had a friend who was actually staying across town in a different hotel. We didn't get to catch up. He was at a conference, but he tweeted oh my god, they've got Japanese toilets here, this is awesome, which is the hardest thing I find about travel to North America. There we go, day and age, they spend it on research and development on butter and cheese. Well, again, money well spent if that is the case. That's what I certainly hope that they did. In French, it's actually called pain perdu, which is verbatim lost bread. I did not know that. Well, it seems to be well used anyway. And Vancouver is indeed a seaport, although lots of cities are seaports, but certainly there'd be some money in that. But there is indeed a great deal of money in Vancouver. There seems to be. I don't really get it. But yes, on Grouse Mountain, they had some grizzly bears at the top of the ski resort, which were just out of hibernation. And I gotta say, when I saw these things, I know that grizzly bears are big. I used to watch Grizzly Adams. I've seen nature documentaries. I appreciate grizzly bears are enormous, heartless, soulless killing machines. But seeing one up live myself for the first time, they are really big. I mean, watching them move, like a 3 meter, 9 foot bear walking by you that weighs like a ton or whatever. I was like, geez, this is like watching a dinosaur move. And it did occur to me, as a New Zealander in Australia, I'm terrified of everything because every small bug, every little octopus with cute blue rings, every little jellyfish can kill you in Australia. And so basically it means that you have this ridiculous situation that I was terrified to death of every little bug there, and it's really stressful. And I really appreciate that while Canada also has dangerous animals, it's pretty clear cut. The animals that are going to kill you in Canada, it's pretty obvious that they're going to kill you. A cute little octopus or a jellyfish, that's kind of hard to accept. That's terrifying. A grizzly bear is kind of like, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense, doesn't it? If you see a grizzly bear, it's like mea culpa. Obviously, I'm about to be killed. But a little spider, it's kind of, you feel a little bit tricked, a little bit ripped off. So I like the simplicity of Canada, that things are just clear cut. You know which animals are going to kill you just by looking at them. Yes, lumberjacks. There were going to be lumberjacks at the Grouse Mountain Resort, but that didn't start until late May. We came right between when the seasons were changing, unfortunately, so we missed that. But yes, I did not get to see lumberjacks. There were police, although they weren't wearing Mountie uniforms. There were stuffed bears in Mountie uniforms in a lot of places, but I didn't actually get to see Mounties, which is also, I suppose, a little bit disappointing. The cars are super nice. They're like brand new cars, mostly Japanese and European. A few American cars, but the perk got censored there, but I uncensored because that's a funny comment. Yeah, the cars are beautiful, which again, in America, there are just so many like rust heaps. And the idea that America is like trying to force Japan to buy more American cars. Have you seen your own cars lately? And the thing is, America has nice cars, and you can see them in Canada. They're all brand new, and they've all recently been bought. And you have the SUVs and the trucks and everything. But all these big crap hole, enormous like cars with fixed rear axles and all this sort of thing. You don't see those in Canada, or at least not in Vancouver. I'm sure you do see them in parts of Canada, but I thought that was really nice. They were just the cars just look great. And I saw the BMW i8 a couple of times, and I saw that and I thought, wow, that's a car I would like to own. I would seriously think about saving up the money for probably a second-hand one of those. Looks like a spaceship. I love that so much. That car just looks cool. And yes, the final comment. I did notice a lot of Kiwis and Aussies in Vancouver, and it was kind of funny because when they live there, obviously our accent is a little bit probably too distinct over there, so they adapt. And I kept hearing people with these hybrid accents. I heard people that would say words like, they would say some words that would sound very Australian, but then they'd flip back into the sort of nasally North American accent as well. But yeah, I like the way I didn't hear any strong cartoonish aboots or anything like that. And again, I know that the Americans mock the Canadian accent unfairly, and they overdo it, and believe me, we know about that because you've got no idea what it's like being a Kiwi in Australia, where we get it a lot worse. Flight of the Conchords kind of touches on like when they met in Australia, they immediately checked, she was Australian? I think she was Australian. Did she mock your accent? Well, I don't think she mocked my accent. I think she could have been subtly mocking your accent. Yes, I feel like I was being subtly mocked. This kind of, we're used to putting up with it as well. No, Canadians just speak nice. I find it very plain and easy to understand, and people there were just really awesome. So I had a really great week in Vancouver, and thank you, Canada, for that. I'm glad to be back in Japan. But I would go back to Canada in a second, and honestly, if I could switch some of my US business trips to Canada, I would actually like that. So yeah, good on you, Canada. We're out of time, I have been doing some remixing and some playing around, including, I think I've got one of Tai Nakamura's tracks set up where I was playing around on K Oscillator. And it might be fun actually to do a bit of an outro showing that off if you guys are okay with that. So let me set this up quickly, if I can do that. Dun, dun, dun. Let's, it might not be in here actually, it might be in my iPhone. I was playing around with it on the train, having a great time. The entire stuff is all really great, but just for sort of an example of the sort of stuff that we were doing, I think this is it. Boom. So Ty's got he's got awesome tracks all over the place. You should go check out his SoundCloud, Tai Naka, Shogunai Tai. Ooh. Okay, that is not it. So, okay, I can still do this. I need to go grab something. Hang on a sec. Oh, over here. Okay, let me see if I can set this up. So this means I can't do a visual, but, oh crap, wrong phone. But I can do this. So hopefully this will work. Okay, that seems to work. No. Let's try this. Okay, let's go. Let's see if I can switch this over into Korg mode. And here we go. So let's Oh. Have a good week, everyone. That's the end of the show. Have a good week, everyone. That was a bit of a mess. It was a bit of a remix when I did it in GarageBand, but I'll be able to show you all of that very soon. Have a good week, and remember, come back at the same time next week, 10:30 p.m. Remember to like if you liked, and have a good week, everybody. See ya. Peace.